So the Halloween franchise has developed several timelines over the course of the last 40 years. We've got the Halloween purist timeline with just the 78 classic. You've got the H2O timeline that has Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and Halloween H2O. You've got some people who just like the Halloween 1 and Halloween 2 franchise. Some people, very few probably, that like to include Resurrection in that H2O timeline. You've got your Thorn timeline that includes Halloween's 4 through 6. You got your Halloween 3 timeline. You've got your Rob Zombie timeline. Today we're going to be talking about the H2O timeline and the H40 timeline, which is the David Gordon Green's timeline. I like to call that Halloween. I probably have to say that I enjoy the H2O timeline a little bit more than David Gordon Green's timeline, and these are 5 things that the H2O timeline did better than the H40 timeline.
I can't believe this. I can't tell you anything. Every time I tell you something, everybody else knows about it. No, mad.
So I don't know how controversial this is going to be, but I just wanted to throw this out there that after some time to stew on what was Halloween Ends, I watched actually the entire series back just a couple of weeks ago, and had some time to kind of reflect on everything. So let's get into the 5 things that I think the H2O timeline did better. I'm going to count down from like maybe least important to the most important. So instead of doing 1 through 5, I'll do 5 through 1. I guess it didn't really matter. But anyway, number 5, the characters are better. I think they're a little bit more believable, a little bit more likable. You've got, obviously, the classic original 78 Halloween is in both of these timelines. Kind of have to take that away, right? So you've got to kind of look at Halloween 40 kills and ends, and then you got to look at Halloween 2 and then H2O. I think that although that there are plenty of red shirts in the H2O timeline, there are also plenty of red shirts in the David Gordon Green timeline, especially thanks to Halloween Kills. I just think that while H40 had some pretty decent characters and okay character development for the most part, I think that the teenagers were a little bit less likable, and even some of the younger adults were a little bit less likable in H40, especially Halloween Kills. Halloween Kills, a lot of red shirts. And not that I have a problem with that. If you're looking for a slasher or a Jason type movie, which it kind of more was than a Halloween movie, I think that's fine. Halloween Ends, everybody was just detestable. Corey Cunningham, just I don't even want to get started on that shit right now. You can watch my review for that. But mostly just detestable. A lot of red shirts and a lot of characters that just were a little uninteresting. In the H2O timeline, you look at kind of Halloween 2 and H2O. Some of them might be a little bit. They might be red shirts, or they might be a little bit annoying at first, like Bud. I think they really grow on you over time. There's a certain charm to them. They deliver their lines well. They're believable. They kind of seem like real people. They have the banter, and Jimmy's likable. Bud, is much of a creep as he can be, is funny. I really felt for all the nurses there. Jill, Karen, and even Miss Owls was kind of a tough pill in that movie. Most of the characters in Halloween 2 that had any kind of significant amount of screen time, Deputy Hunt I didn't think was that bad. He's not the world's greatest actor, but I didn't think he was that bad. Fast forward to H2O, really the only detestable 2 that I didn't really like was Sarah and Charlie. And it wasn't even so much Sarah as it was Charlie. He had some really piss poor dialogue. If you want to include Resurrection in this, you've got your Busta Rhymes problems, and then the main character, Sarah, and that was, which I believe was Sarah, pretty bad. She couldn't scream, so they had to have somebody dub her screams. And some of the delivery, especially the chainsaw scene or whatever it was at the end in the shed, was pretty cringe bad. I really don't want to count Resurrection. I'm just kind of sticking to the true H2O timeline, at least what I call the true H2O timeline. I think the characters are a little bit better here. I really do. I think that the ones that are there are a little bit more likable and believable than this. Just my opinion, and all these, again, are my opinion. That's just this is how I feel. So number 4, I put setting. So I think setting is a little bit better in Halloween 2 and H2O than they are in the David Gordon Green trilogy. Now, the setting is Haddonfield, except for in H2O. And I didn't hate what they did with Haddonfield in H40. and you know, and while that trilogy was lively, you know, you actually had a living, breathing town with, you know, plenty of going on. It just didn't have the same feel and atmosphere in the second and third outing of David Gordon Green's trilogy as it did in H2O and H2. I think that an isolated hospital, you know, it's dark, it's scary. You know, you really feel empty and alone and helpless. And you know, these nurses and these workers and these patients are just there for the taking if Michael wanted to, right? And which he does. I think that's the right approach that you would want to take in a scary movie. They made a big deal about the hospital being used again that they did in Halloween 2 and Halloween Kills and Ends, but I mean, it wasn't even used that well. It was just a bunch of mob scenes and a bunch of nonsense that I felt could have been done a lot better and a lot different. In the same vein of Halloween 2, if you're going to use that, right? Just say, hey, we use this location, haha, it's great. It doesn't mean anything if you don't really use it right. And the same goes in Halloween H2O with the private school. It's not Haddonfield. It's in California. You know, they did Scream the movie up a little bit due to the nature of the time and all that and the popularity of Scream. But I still felt that isolation. I still felt that creepiness, you know, where you've only got just a handful of people left. They had that kind of scapegoat of the entire rest of the school going off to Yosemite, and you know, kind of leaves them all there for the picking, right? I like that. Halloween Ends, you know, what they try to do with that, and it didn't feel like Halloween. It didn't feel as dark. It didn't feel the same. It just felt like a normal movie that just had a bunch of fucked up people in it. So that leads me now to number 3. And that's a more cohesive story. Now, I don't feel like I'm necessarily grasping at straws here. I know they're slasher movies, right? They're horror movies. You don't have to have a real deep story about it, right? You know, the first one is as lean and as simple as it can be. Everything seems to belong together in the H2O timeline than it does in the H40 timeline. 2018 one does an okay job at connecting with the first one a little bit, right? And Kills is a little bit of a stretch, but it's not as bad as Ends is. Ends is so far gone. It's so detached from the first two in this new trilogy that, I mean, it really puts a damper on this entire timeline for me. Whereas H2O felt like it was an extension of the second one. And this is probably where everybody's not going to agree with me for sure. I believe that the brother and sister thing actually helps the franchise and the story at this point more so than not. I think they made a big deal out of it in H40 and like marketing, and they made that little joke in the movie about, you know, somebody making it up. But I think by the end of it, you don't really know where to go. And so you have to keep crossing these two megastars. You got Michael Myers and you've got the one of the top final girls of all time, right? Laurie Strode. You've got this match where they're in these movies and they're supposed to meet. So you got to find a way for them to meet, you know, because he's not supposed to know or care about her, really. He's not supposed to have there's not supposed to be any rhyme or reason for what he does. Trying to make him scary again. I'm not saying that any of these are perfect by any means, and I'm not saying it comes down to taste, but at least it all feels like it fit together in the H2O timeline. Everything was a continuation of the other, whereas I didn't feel that was necessarily as the case or even as good in H40. Which leads me to my second point is Michael's ending, his death, is a lot better in H2O than in Halloween Ends. I feel like the setting is better. It's a lot more personal with just them two. I feel like you can get behind it because you're behind her. And I feel like that brother-sister relationship and all the trauma she went through kind of culminates in this moment, and it means just so much more. It's so much more personal than this convoluted, incoherent mess that Halloween Ends was. The town right there, you know, with them. I don't know. I don't feel like, I didn't feel it at all. Like when I watched, it's like, between Corey and all that, it wasn't vibing, man. It wasn't meshing well. It was just so much, it just meant so much more in Halloween H2O, getting his head chopped off. Assuming we end at H2O. And that also leads me into number 1. Laurie's character, Jamie Lee Curtis playing Laurie in this, is much better than Jamie Lee Curtis playing Laurie in these new ones. I think her character's better. I think her development's better. I think her trauma is done better. She's a severe alcoholic. She faked her death, moved off to California. She took her son with her that she had. Yeah, you don't have Jamie Lloyd. You don't really know who the father is, but you know, whatever. She basically took her kid and she ran and she faked her death to try to get away from him, hoping that one day he would never come back. That scene with Adam Arkin in her room, or in her living room, explaining who she was, trying to get him to listen, and his reaction I thought was actually pretty well done, knowing that, hey, he's my brother. This is my story. This is why I'm so fucked up. This is why I'm so traumatized. I'm worried every year, especially on Halloween, that my brother's going to come back and I'm going to have to go through this again. And I've got a son. It hits so different. It's done so much better. The acting, I thought Jamie Lee Curtis gave it her all in that, even though she may not like H2O at this point. I thought she gave it her all, and I thought that in hindsight, it's still done a lot better than H40. Her overcoming Michael at the end was so much more powerful and so much stronger, and then obviously leading his demise. It's just so much better. It's done way better. If you're going to end the story, I feel like H2O did that. If you don't want to even account Resurrection, H2O did that perfectly. So, and I actually would be interested to hear what you guys think. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. And that's been my 5 things that the H2O timeline did better than the H40 timeline. And I'll see you guys next time.